and welcome to another episode on Policy Square. Policy Square is an initiative by Primus Partners in collaboration with Business World, our media partner. This is an effort to create rich conversations with unique insights around the diverse nature of policy and government. In this episode on Mission Karmayogi, we are joined by two public sector experts, Mr. Adil Zainulbhai, Chairman, Capacity Building Commission, and Hemang Jani, Secretary, Capacity Building Commission. Adil, Hemang, welcome to Policy Square. In April 2021, Honorable Prime Minister launched Mission Karmayogi and the Capacity Building Commission for civil services capacity building as a mid-career continuous learning national program. So can you tell us some highlights, some triggers in terms of what were the learning and development needs of civil services, any gaps, challenges that would have formed the backdrop to the launch of Mission Karmayogi?
So I'll start, and I think Hemang has been involved with it for 3 years or 4 years, so he will have a lot more of the background. But I think let me describe what it is, and then we can talk a little bit about how it came to be and what was the background. I think the idea is that, for the government and civil services to deliver what is required of the civil services for the citizens and the country, they must each civil servant must be armed with the right training, capability, systems, whatever is required so that they can do it. It's not enough that they are in place. It is that they should have all the tools necessary and all the knowledge necessary. So that was the first sort of thinking, and that's what we're trying to do. And the second one is that, if you think about adults, learning is very, very different from learning in schools. In schools, you can have a teacher said, study this, and, they will study it and it's fine. By the time you're 16, 17, 18, or even in college, you can do that. But for adult learning, all principles of adult learning are that you have to teach it differently and you have to build the capacity differently. It cannot just be classroom. That is not the only part of it. And second is that people want to learn when they need it. You can't say, here's 20 things that you should learn sometime within the next 10 years, it'll be useful. Adults don't learn like that. On the other hand, if you need something, then you're really willing and open to do it. So let me give you a trivial example. Let's say that you're getting a computer, you have to get on the computer and start a new program. And you have to do it tomorrow. And if you don't do it, it won't work. Right? So you're now very open to somebody telling you how to use the program. But if I talked to you about that 5 days ago or 3 weeks ago or 3 months ago, you wouldn't really care, right? Because you don't know when that will come. So that is the second principle, which is that this is a lifelong learning for civil servants. Whenever they really need something is when we should be able to provide it. And that it should be driven not by a stick, you have to do this. It should be driven by their needs, requirements, and they should pull. Our sense is that in many places, if you provide the right kinds of teaching and the right kind of capability building opportunities, then people will pull a lot more. You don't have to say you will do so many hours of training. People will do that and more. Right? So that is what we're trying to do in Mission Karmayogi. It's not a single program. It is an overall approach to do something. But you can give the background. Since you were involved in thinking about it over 4 years.
Thank you. So, see, India's ambition in 21st century are way, way, way beyond anyone could have imagined before 10 years. And to meet the overall objective of, say, a 5 trillion economy, making India Atmanirbhar, creating ease of living for every citizen, we also need a 21st century civil services. Now, to have 21st century civil services and to enable them to deliver the public service that we want for the new India, we also need 21st century enabling environment. So the essence of Mission Karmayogi is enabling the path of action for every civil servant. As our Honorable Prime Minister puts it, every civil servant is the sevak. The ultimate goal of government is Antyodaya, reaching out to the last mile of citizen services. And if you know, in Gita, chapter 3 talks about Karma Yoga. That is, let there not be inaction. So how do we enable the path of action for every civil servant? And perhaps this is one of its kind program that has been launched globally in maybe last 2 or 3 decades, where we are covering 3 million civil servants at the central government level. And if we touch all the civil servants in the country, including the state's governments, the number goes up to somewhere around 30 million civil servants. So that's the essence of our work. It's called National Program for Civil Service Capacity Building. It was approved in September 2020 and launched in April 2021 last year.
So we spoke about the andragogy, the principles of adult learning and the 21st century learning. But at the heart of public sector leadership lies the real world problems that need to be solved for. And we speak of digital disruption, data, environmental challenges, rural economy, and along with this is the growing and intensifying social conversations. So what in your view would be the core themes when we speak at a macro level perspective of capacity building?
First of all, it's 3.1 million civil servants. Right? So it is unlikely that a single approach or a single theme will work for all. So our approach has been that if you want to create real demand within people for doing this, we have to kind of figure out what is it that different segments of the civil service want. Sure. And then create and curate the programs or the learning environment that allows them to do. So it can go all the way. So let me describe 2 extremes, right? So you get an idea, very practical. So one idea is that for most people on the street, the government is police, railway ticket clerk, etc. Right? It's not the secretary sitting here writing policy. So how do we teach that group of people citizen centricity and how to deal with citizens and how to help them solve their problems? Right? That's one element. And so we spent a lot of time working with railways and then the postal service to find a way to create to spark that inner sevak in them, so that they are not regulators. In the past, a ticket collector was a regulator. Do you have your ticket or no? Are you doing the right thing or no? How do we change it from that to helping people, while at the same time fulfilling their important regulatory roles? And so that's what we're trying to teach them on how to be citizen-centric in the 10 or 20 points of conflict that can occur during the day. Right? So it's very specific. It's 3 days of training. 100,000 people have gone through the training. You can see the difference that it makes in what they do. Right? So first, they have to feel proud about it. And so we try to get their feelings of pride out, what matters to them, and then teach them what is it that you do in different situations, and teach them in a 3-day class. And it is amazing. If you sit through it, you can see the difference. Right? For example, one person said, what I learned from the class was what makes me excited. And what makes me excited is if I can get one smile in a day, that's enough for me, right? And I never thought about it that way. I said, how many tickets people are cheating, can I catch? Now I think about how can I get a smile in it, right? And that's what we're trying. So that's one extreme of what does it mean to help people do their jobs better. Let me take the other extreme, just so you get an idea, right, of the technicality of it. When we worked with certain departments, they said, we would like to train all our officers on how to write a good memo, right? Even though this is fundamental to the way the government works, we don't think our people really know that. So now we are redoing the courses, and they've already started, and some 2,000 people or 1,000 people, I think, have gone through these courses, which is the basics. How do you write a memo, right? So these are all the things that make government work. So
let me pick up the 2 extremes or the 2 sides that you have picked up.
I should say these are the 2 sides. It's 100,000, plain.
Sure. So multidimensional. Yeah. But so let me pick up on the 2 threads that you just mentioned. On the one hand, you did mention citizen-centric, and the Prime Minister has spoken about a people-centric approach being the soul of Mission Karmayogi. So now India is a diverse and a large polity, right? And so from the lens of transparent governance, in terms of what would be the people's role, one is, of course, a citizen-centric approach from the governance perspective. But what would be the people's role in such a conversation?
So I'll start, and then Hemang can talk about this. So very interesting thing that the Honorable Prime Minister told us when we said, listen, it's a very complicated thing to solve, right? It has many lenses, etc. You have to think about promotion policy and all sorts of things. And some people told us, you can't change anything unless you change everything. right? And it is part of it is true. Over time, you have to do that. And the Prime Minister said to us, he said, listen, when we try to change everything, nothing changes. Okay? So why don't you take one thing, which is training of our civil servants, get that done, and then you can work on all the other things, right? So we said, that's very good. We're going to focus on central civil servants and started with that. Of course, now the states are calling us and saying, wait a second, what about us? Why don't you train us, right? Then the districts are calling and saying, those states, who cares about the state bureaucracy? What about us? The urban local bodies are calling us and saying, what about our people? We have lots of people. Why don't they need the same things. Why don't you train them? So I think what has happened is we are very conscious of this. That to make change in an organization like the civil service takes a lot of time and effort. And we want to concentrate initially on the civil service. Okay? And even there, we are having trouble keeping it, right? So it's gone from 3 million to I don't know how many millions we are covering. We've lost track, right? So this issue of how the citizen should play is a very important one. I think we're going to get to it a little later because, listen, the largest, if you talk to people around the world, what is the largest training program? Not counting China, because everything in China is huge, right? The UK will tell us, we had a massive training program and we trained 2,000 people, right? Here we have one small sliver of training and we're training 100,000 people, right? So the scale, so we are very conscious that as a commission, the real way to make change is get one thing done really well first. Once you get that done, then you can expand on it. But I'll defer to my colleague because he'll add another dimension to this.
No, just to carry forward what Adil mentioned. See, training was not considered a good word or not considered, if I may not use a good and bad analogy, but it was not considered as an important activity. And it's true for any government in the world. Globally, training is always taken as a secondary activity. But the essence of Mission Karmayogi is also to make sure that training can also be a powerful tool for improving the public service delivery. Training can be a powerful tool to develop a civil servant as an individual and to develop an organization, an agency of government to improve the state services and to improve the state capacity. That is the essence with which we are working. Now, where the citizen comes here, for example, any training that we do for the citizen-facing staff, citizens' feedback and citizens' expectation from the civil servant and from the services is at the center. So it is a demand-driven approach rather than a supply-driven approach where somebody in a training institution is designing a course which is not relevant for the civil servant perhaps. So what we are trying is we are piloting and we are experimenting how do we make our training capacity demand-driven. And there also, of course, every customer of a civil servant, including a citizen or including any other civil servant, they become our focus. But adding another dimension to the conversation, see, our overall approach has three lenses. The first lens is the national priority lens. We want every civil servant to think and every government agency and department to think that are they capable of delivering the national priorities they are entrusted with. For example, say Civil Aviation Ministry, if one of their goals is to create many new small airports on public-private partnership basis, are they capable of doing it or do they need some immediate capacity development or capacity enhancement with that department? Second important lens, which our chairman already mentioned, the citizen centricity. Are you able to deliver on the expectations of citizen? Are you able to deliver on the services in functional and operational role that you are? And the third and the most important lens globally is the emerging technology lens. Emerging technology is not only throwing challenges, which we as government will have to think about how to regulate or how to govern, but at the same time, it is throwing many solutions. So as a civil servant or as a government agency or department, are you capable of adopting it? Are you capable of appreciating those solutions and absorbing them to improve your delivery? That is the essence with which we are working.
So, Hemang, taking from what you said and Adil, what you just said, let's come to the question of the generalist versus the specialist, and especially around the IAS, it's commented that, they are not specialists in the ministries and in their departments. So what is your view? Did you also find this in your surveys and studies? And would you be factoring this in the whole competency building of government workforce connected to their roles?
Let me start out by saying that, to re-emphasize, there are 3.1 million civil servants central. If you look at all the cadres, which is IAS, IFS, IES, whatever, right? There's 23 of them, right? That all of those combined account for less than 100,000 of all of that. So, at one level, in many places, when you think of government, at least in the educated elite, we think about the IAS. But the IAS is a very, very, very small part of this entire group of people. And even the IAS, independent of how good a policy you create, is dependent on the 3.1 million to deliver those services, right? So, first of all, we are very conscious of the fact that we have to train 3.1, improve the capacity of 3.1 million. We are not over-focused on the IAS or anyone else, number one, right? Number two, we are not mandating. It's not our role in the present when we're trying to do capacity building to mandate what an IAS officer has to know other than some basics, right? But let's say we go to, so I'll tell you practically how it goes, right? We go to the Civil Aviation Ministry or the Labour Ministry and say, what is your most urgent training needs? We ask the IAS and everybody else who works, right? So they highlight what they think. And you know what's so interesting is that the trainings that they highlight are three kinds. One is function, right? Which everybody says, right? Which is we need to understand how government works, GFR, vigilance, how to write memos, how to write a good policy, which is everybody wants to know. But the second most important thing is they say we need to know our industry. We don't know our industry. How can you get us training programs that allow us to know our industry well enough so that we can make a difference? So they themselves are recognizing it. They are not saying that we have to specialize we are not saying you should specialize for 20, 30 years, but we are saying what is an urgent need? You need to get access to the best knowledge, the best specialists, so you can do it. They themselves are recognizing it. So in almost every ministry is now developing programs that allow their people to personally understand how it works. And I'll give you two very good examples of this. Ministry of Civil Aviation said, look, we are creating, we are regulators for airports, we're regulators for airlines and other things. Most of the people who work here have never really been to an airport other than when they're flying out, right? They've never really seen what it takes to run an airline. So what we've arranged for them is, or they said this is the need and we help them do it, is to take a set of people from Ministry of Civil Aviation and show them, spend a week with an airline, spend a week with an airport. So now you understand what are the real requirements of an airport. We're doing the same thing in Ministry of Food Processing. Ministry of Food Processing, most of the people have never been to a food processing plant, so they don't know what is there, right? So I think a lot of knowledge about the sector, we have to help, or they have to help themselves figure out how to get up to speed on it, so that they can do whatever they do.
You're providing the environment for it.
You don't have to get into this debate of are you specialist or general. It doesn't matter. I have to do my job. I am, to meet the PM's national goals. Food processing industry has to grow by X. How am I going to get that done? Well, I better understand how the food processing industry works. Otherwise, I can't fulfill what I've got to do, right? So we're trying to be, I think our goal is if you want to deliver on the ground, you have to be intensely practical. True. We do not engage in theological debates about training, right? Which if you put three academics in a room, you could engage forever. Right. We are not interested in that. We are interested in, and this Prime Minister and Hemang has worked, he'll talk about what we're looking for. It must make a difference on the ground. We are not doing training for the sake of training. We are doing it so that you can accomplish, the government can accomplish what it's trying to get done. So whatever it takes, if we have to take people to the airports, great. If they should go work there for 2 months, fine. Let's figure out a way to do that. And vice versa. Can we get some private sector people to come and spend a week in the ministry so they can help guide it? So it's a long answer to your question about functional knowledge, behavioral knowledge.
I think you've really summed it up well, yes.
Let me put it this way. The key tenet or key principle of Mission Karmayogi is creating an environment where you are focusing on civil servant from a rule-based entity to a role-based entity. So our goal is to enable and empower whatever role you are supposed to play. If you are supposed to play a specialist role as a civil servant, how to equip them for that role. If you are supposed to play a generalist role where behavioral and functional competencies become more important, then how do we equip? How do we create opportunities for equipping? Second, see, in 21st century, and COVID has already shown it, the skills required for doing any job are going to be changing, are going to change a lot, right? And where knowledge of technology, knowledge of how to work in teams, knowledge of how to work remotely in teams, knowledge of your functional competencies are going to become more important. Your behavioral competencies for delivering the services through a very different medium, technology-enabled medium, will also become very different. If we are talking to a customer representative on phone remotely, how do you even gauge whether the person in front of you is angry, is satisfied? How do you even gauge that? So I think the skills of the future are changing, and we are trying to orient all our efforts and all our training need assessment towards the skills of future.
That's a wonderful message. And on that note, thank you both for adding to this understanding and shaping this whole dialogue with us.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.